Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the board meeting of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. We've got a busy agenda today, both part one and part two. This is being recorded. When you're watching it, it's because we've released it onto our website. We don't have any members of the public with us today, but you're always very welcome to attend here in person at the offices. I'd like to welcome Richard Garvey. Richard is our 2024 Board Apprentice under Board Apprentice Programme. We're delighted that you can join us, Richard. Perhaps just so people know, just say a little bit about your experience.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for the welcome. It's been a really nice induction. So thanks to EDC for that, James in particular. So I'm Richard Garvey. As Simon said, I'm currently Development Director at Seller, which is a private sector developer, best known for developing Shard. Doing a lot of work currently with Network Rail and TfL. It's working on some transport infrastructure projects. And it's obviously very interested to come and see what EDC is doing, because obviously it's a much more sort of macro scale than I'm used to.
Good. Well, look, we're delighted that you're here with us, and I think it will be a two-way experience. I'm sure you'll strengthen the decisions, the quality of decisions we make as a board, and you'll get something out of it. It'll help you CV development and your career progress. Welcome. Thanks. So why don't we just move on? Apologies for absence.
Apologies from Simon Blanchflower today.
Yes, and that's very much, we just could not find a date that works mutually for everyone. Simon, attendance is excellent. I'm sure he doesn't like not being here, but we accept his apologies. Derek, we have Derek from County Council online. Derek, good to see you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Do we have any declarations of interest other than the standing declarations of interest for our planning committee members? No? All right, then we have a set of our part one minutes from our board meeting, our last board meeting on the 29th of November 2023 in front of us. Everyone got these as a true and fair record of the meeting that we had?
Yes.
Are then approved. We have our open actions. Ian, is there anything we should focus on there?
No, I don't think anything to add other than what's in the document itself today.
Great. Thank you. Then we have our forward plan there, forward look. Some lot of important decisions coming through the year there. Is the year, make some progress. Good. So look, why don't we move into our first paper today? That's the Chief Executive one update. We've got a lot to get through today. So I know we'll be focusing on the meat of the issues and papers. Ian.
Thank you, Simon. So a number of matters covered in my paper today. Wanted to start with the corporate performance report for the end of quarter three. Hopefully the report is self-explanatory. Two things, I think. One thing to highlight and one thing to address probably in the business plan priorities of the annex to that. So I think as well as all the other highlights that are included at 2.2, I think it's definitely worthy of mention about the house completions that have been achieved. The board will be aware that we established a target at the beginning of the year of 580. That was on what I thought was sound advice at the time, that the market was slowing down and the expectations of sales in the year was definitely a slide. We achieved 630 last year. So yeah, we are already at 652. So we set a new record for the number of completions in a financial year since we've been in operation, which is fantastic news. And there's a bit of explanation in 2.3 as to how we have come to record that significant increase in the last quarter. So much of that is down to one particular development, Keep Notes, down at Cable Wharf, where on visual inspection we were able to discover that there were at least 2 quite sizable blocks of apartments which had been brought forward. They were due for completion post March, but they've been brought forward into this year. So they have scored. We had reported previously that there was some under-reporting. We were finding it very difficult to get some of the developers to report their completions. I think our lesson is we need to do more visual inspections, frankly, to make sure we're capturing things that we don't rely solely on the house builders. We obviously do cooperate with them as well. So yeah, a really positive story in that another record-breaking year in terms of house completions. But there is a little bit of embarrassment on my part that I managed to persuade the board to target a 5.8, and we've smashed it
After some resistance, I think. And a comment that, you know, hope you weren't going to have to eat too much humble pie burst through the reduced timing. So
yeah. So goodness only knows for us next year then on that basis.
no controlling this cheap. So.
So
It's coming.
in one other matter to mention is on the dashboard with the RAG status. One of them that you'll see that they're all green, but one that is currently green is prepare and submit the strategic outline case for the health and wellbeing hub and progress that project. We are still working with the health providers, the MSCB and local trust on that project. We had done quite a lot of work beginning of last year to progress the slot so that we then put it on board whilst the health partners did a strategic overview of their health needs and their estate strategy last summer and into the autumn. We haven't yet reinvigorated the outline case, our case for investment, but we are about to sort of ramp that back up again. But I've had to take the decision that because of the other priorities that we need to achieve before the end of March, this is one that we won't achieve by the end of March in terms of the strategic outline case coming to the board. Hopefully it won't be too much after that, but there will be that effectively is red now. And so it's down to managing our resources and making sure that we have got other things which do need to happen before March, whereas this one is not time critical for me. So.
All right. Yes, Valerie.
Thank you. Just brilliant to see the figure 652, but I was struggling with it a little partly because it's so large. 15% increase roughly, isn't it, over and above what we're anticipating? And the thing that's running through my head is that in an ideal world, the data that we produce should exactly tally with the data that Homes England produces. And going on site and inspecting, you could see a building, a house, which looks complete, but which actually is not practically complete because it might not have commissioned M&E installations, for example. So how do we know that we are interpreting completion correctly, and does our data tally with that described by Homes England?
Well, I don't know that Homes England would hold any data for.
Well, they've undersigned completion because of the drawdown of funding.
Homes England?
Yes, when you undertake grant money.
Yeah, well, there might. It's probably not grant money going into very many of the units because most
not all. This is true.
Most of the affordable housing will be delivered under a Section 106. There will be some. But Mark, I mean, we use as our trigger for completion the CML. But explain.
Yeah, I think that probably over the years, I think that this is where certainly in the early years of reporting, we were doing a lot of manual inspections, reporting what we could see. And then we're finding it was difficult to then reconcile that with data from the developers that we would get then after that. And then that's why we've then moved to trying to work on developer data, because then we can all agree with one sort of version of events, because we haven't been getting that developer data. That's why there's a bit more benefit in terms of going out and about. I tend to be is the space habitable? Is it complete that someone could live in it? Which is essentially other tests that the councils will go through when they're looking at local plan delivery. I suppose because that's my background, that's the way in which we generally approach things. The benefit of going out on site is that the lady who does that from the team can talk to the site manager. She can then go in and then see some of those units. So next year we'll then do that for every time that we'll have six board meetings this year. So we'll then do that for every board meeting. But I think that as long as we have a consistent approach our side, and that then gives the board a consistent approach. It is tricky to get consistency across everyone, because some developers will say that it's completed when it's sold, which for our benefit, it is completed when it is finished.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
So consistency, I guess, going forward is the key to actually then, isn't it?
Neil, can I bring you in?
Yes, well, I'm delighted that more completions than we anticipated. But we do need to think about what are the consequences for the future. We know that 68 homes were the ones at Cable Wharf in the 2 apartment blocks. That's in the papers. But we get 326 in Q3. And with that, I don't want to go into the precise figures, but how much of that is catch up, which won't happen again? And how much of it is just good performance in that quarter? Because I wouldn't want us to get over enthusiastic, say that we've got to 652 and at the end of the year we got to 700, so we set it again, without knowing how much of it is catch up from underreporting.
Yeah, and I don't want the board to get too optimistic about high numbers next year, but yeah, it's probably about 50-50. I think that when we were looking at the forecasting across the year at the beginning of the year, there was always high numbers in Q1, 2 and 3, and it dropped away in Q4. There wasn't as much in Q1 as we expected. Q2 probably performed as we were expecting, then Q3 probably caught up in terms of where Q1 was. We're not expecting much to happen between now and the end of March. So it's probably about 50-50, I would have said, in terms of the developers catching up with themselves, and then obviously then going that little bit further in terms of the points that Ian made, and then partly then that's that reporting, so catch up.
But the underreporting is not going to happen again. Once it's been reported, we caught up. So I just wanted to get an idea of how much of it was underreporting, something that could have happened 2 quarters ago, 3 quarters ago, or 4 quarters ago.
Yeah, probably about, well, I wouldn't say half, maybe about 25%
Of the 326.
Yeah, on the basis that some of the units have come forward early, some of it's catch up, some of it's just a high quarter in terms of what we're expecting anyway. Yeah, that is probably best gut feel for me.
All right. Yep.
We probably, when we're looking for next year, need to have a better idea of what the catch up was, so that we don't just predict. I know we don't just predict forward. We look at what's happening, the number of permissions, and so on. But we just need to be aware of how much was catch up and how much wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, we started to look at next year anyway. We've been doing a lot more work to understand what's happening on sites. We're expecting certain developments to complete next year, which I think it provides a greater ability to have more comfort around that, what that number is. So yeah, I mean, I'm quite confident. I think probably this year, because the markers in the market at the time, I think we're just a little bit too cautious. But some of the developers put a load of foundations down, for example. We were told that they were going to then cover those up, but they haven't covered them up. They just carried on building. So I think probably next year we'll just need to learn from that.
Yes, perhaps to, I think Neil's point is well made, and I'm sure there'll be kind of an analytical basis for the number that we're approaching next year. But I think it's good news, and it's a strong testament. People want to live here, they want to buy here. The developers are busy here. They know that they're able to produce, quality homes in a place where people want to live. It's a testament to the planning department here, getting things consented, getting it done, giving Hatfields an opportunity to build out. So well done to the whole planning department as well. But it's undoubtedly undoubtedly good news. On the other side of that, with accelerated housing delivery, we need to make sure that we deliver the transport infrastructure, social infrastructure, a number of elements of that, both in part 1 and part 2. But it puts that into sharp relief. But I think generally it's good news. More generally, just an observation. I don't know if there are any other comments from the board. Yes, Nick.
So as what I saw in those numbers and the comment was that actually quite a large element of the acceleration was down to developers converting what should have been market sale to affordable market.
Sorry, I missed the last bit. Market sale to what?
Affordable.
All right.
So effectively, they are selling to the housing associations what they've hasn't sold to the market. So the question is that an ongoing trend to maintain 500 plus, or is it something that is?
Yeah, look, I think it would be good to understand and the type there. My assumption would be there's quite a lot of shared ownership in there.
Yes.
Yeah, given that now we're not dealing with a help to buy availability, that the route into home ownership is very much through shared ownership, and therefore compared with the full market sale, if you can sell to an RP on a shared ownership basis, particularly as the coupon on the rent element is lower than potentially mortgage rates, it's really very attractive tenure for people who want to get onto the housing ladder.
Yeah, just one other thing to add. We are finding that this year that there are more stock units. So historically, we haven't had any properties that are completed and sort of waiting. And we are seeing that across multiple sites now. So even though they are complete, they are ready to be occupied. Some of those haven't then been sold. So that's a slightly sort of different thing than we've been saying historically.
All right. So generally, I think Ebbsfleet Development Corporation, we are bucking the national trend. I think there's no doubt about that.
But if we are going to be producing a figure for the current year, is that figure going to actually tell us that you expect it to be X% markets for sale, X% shared ownership, and X% affordable?
We haven't.
Yeah, I'm still looking forward to us having a material BTR exposure.
We have KPIs, obviously, that cover things like affordable and then diversified housing. So when we bring the KPI targets to the board, we can then outline that. We don't normally split the affordable between the different products, but we have obviously got forecasting around that, so we can give an indication of what that's.
It would be interesting to see approximately breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, just to make a point as well, that this is what happens when the market slows, and it has. I mean, it's still got very good sales rate. No doubt about it. Slower than it was 2 years ago, and house builders have always done this in order to keep the cash moving, etc., etc. They will opportunistically take advantage of RPs that come into the market. So we, in our forecasting, will predict what we know, but I think you have to bear in mind that there probably will be opportunistic transactions that happen in the year that house builders will do, which we won't necessarily know about. But we need to improve our reporting and our closeness to the house builders, so we know what is going on in that.
Yeah, look, I chair an RP, and the RP sector is very challenging, given the amount of capital that's being put to remediation, damp mould. A lot of RPs not bidding for 106 products, so there's obviously an underlying strength here. So I think when we think about the next number, rather than trying to pin the tail on the donkey, it would, which we've missed some way this year, it would be good to understand some of these drivers and the granularity around the number. Mark. Yeah. All right. Otherwise, we've got our corporate performance update there. Just an observation there. Everything's green, which is fantastic, but there's actually some very challenging elements to the work going on here. This is not a low bar set of corporate objectives, so I think it's very impressive. Well done to everyone having a complete, green sheet on all of that. It's really a lot of substantive items.
But when it says it's green for Blue Lake, and it's green for wastewater plant. Should those be amber?
No, I think we've got a clear strategy there and bringing business cases with business case process.
It's green because we think that where we will be at the end of March, we've got one more board meeting, is we can achieve that. So as I've said, I've stated a few things that we don't believe that we will hit the health and wellbeing hub. Priority of bringing the strategic outline case here by March, so that one should be red because we're not about to.
They'll come through in March. We've got our KPIs, very strong performance. What's our KPI set there, and also around action plan on the board effectiveness review. So
Just looking at that one, so I sort of think we're going to be almost closed everything down by the time we come to the next meeting. There's very little left, I think, on that time.
all right, so an impressive performance. So well done to everyone. That paper is for noting. I'm going to assume that is duly noted. Caroline, marketing and communications.
Everyone, I know that we're running a tight ship with regards to timing, so I'll take the paper as read. I don't have anything in addition to add, just a couple of highlights. As mentioned in the paper, we're in the process now of running an annual performance review for our digital strategy. So over this month and leading up to the next board, we'll have a number of recommendations for you all as to how we're going to take our marketing and communications ambition forward for the year ahead. We've had some interesting conversations over 2023 at board with regards to different media mix and platforms, etc. So you'll see a number of recommendations that link back to those conversations in the paper that will be brought forward at next board. There was an expected decline over social media performance in terms of particularly kind of the corporate side of things, notably on LinkedIn. There's a lot of businesses and engagement kind of wound down for the festive period. In contrast, however, our kind of community focused digital ambitions continue to go from strength to strength. So again, we're looking to package all of those findings as to what has worked well and what hasn't worked well, where there's learnings and room for improvement, and you'll be able to see quite a meaty and ambitious marketing pack in the next board meeting. That's it from me. You all, any questions?
Any comments?
Sorry, just on
Yes.
the number of subscribers to the Ebbsfleet digital newsletter, 226. Do we know locality of them? Are they from this area or are they from Plymouth and Glasgow?
No, that's a good question. I can break that down and I can bring it to the next board. You can break down location. I don't think any of them come from Plymouth. The widest
I think it's too extreme. That was.
No, that's completely unserviceable. I will look. I think the furthest is London, if I'm completely honest.
There's a Maidenhead.
Oh, someone snuck in. This is Maidenhead. A lot of the segmentation is residents who sign up, particularly at the drop-in sessions and local events. We also use the segmentation to engage with the developers, particularly around social value and all of the great work that Lara is doing. So there's a wider reach in that context, but there is very much a focus in the audience being central to Ebbsfleet. But I'll drill down the numbers and I'll bring it to the next board.
Please.
Yeah.
Right. Great. For Richard's benefit, we've got a new relatively new website. So a lot of work went into that. A lot of great work. So I think that positions us in a stronger light, selling our strengths. All right, that paper is for noting. Thank you very much, Caroline. Mark, we won't drill down hard into housing delivery numbers again in your paper. I'll let you off this time. Perhaps you'd like to talk us through.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. So yes, the usual update on the development sites in section 1. Every now and again, people ask me how many house builders are on site. I had a count up. I think we've got 7 house builders on site at the moment. The next key submission we're expecting in February, probably the last large application before the end of the business year, is the 3rd phase from Redrow Alcotton South. So that's a collection of apartments and houses along Fast Track in Alcadon. I touched on, we've obviously spoken about the housing numbers. We're expecting a small further delivery before the end of the year. And obviously, because of the number of completions, that has the number of homes are in construction. So that trend will probably carry on. Planning committee a meeting later. We've got 2 presentations lined up. And then we've then got the main meeting to go through the planning enforcement plan, and then a design paper that came out of the conversation here in terms of the dashboard and the red risk that we identified previously. 4.1, we've been having a consultation from KCC. We don't have a lot of minerals and waste issues in this area, so we're not expecting to make significant comments on that, but obviously the team are doing a bit of a review. And quick update in 4.3 around the planning guidance and sustainability. That ties back to the action that's on the board action log. So yeah, planning to bring that to the board in May, and in advance of that, we'll be having only a formal session with the planning committee to get views in terms of making sure that that's a fit for purpose document.
Thank you, Mark. Board, any comments, questions?
Just as a
Yes, of course.
Pipeline of buildings, because presumably if we've had a bit of a spike this year, which is brilliant. I noticed in the tables, Annex A, national planning applications are going down. So will we kind of come to this cliff edge in 2025, or what's your intelligence say?
Whenever I've done long-term forecasting of houses, this year, next year, and the year after were always quite high. I mean, even when we started to do this back in 2015. So I think at the moment there is a good pipeline of permissions. There's also a number of applications that are with us that are quite high numbers. We've got the last 2 phases, Harbour Village, Bellway, that are live applications that we'll be hoping to bring to the committee soon. And we're in discussions with Bellway, with Redrow, with Countryside around sections across Eastern Quarry. So yeah, I don't think the team are thinking they're going to be bored in the coming months. Yeah, I think that we're having. Yeah, we're either at a stage next year where there are some sites that are going to complete, and all the other ones that aren't complete, we're going to be having live conversations on various different parcels. So yeah, it's good sign.
Right. Can I just ask a quick question? Planning enforcement, obviously, as the Garden City gets bigger, there'll be more enforcement cases. What are we seeing in terms of a trend there, and do you have enough resource to deal with that?
We've seen a steady trend over the years, which is why we thought that now was the right time to look at having a planning enforcement plan. We do tend to find there's more complaints coming from local residents in terms of sort of neighbourhood, sort of householder issues, rather than too much going back to the larger house builders. We're trying to be a little bit more streamlined in terms of making quicker decisions about whether something is a problem or not, and whether that's going to be sort of worthwhile to enforce. I mean, linked to that, the other conversation we're going to be having in committee is around looking at that sort of design quality issue during implementation. And actually, the best way to try to manage design changes during implementation is to have more visibility on the ground, so that we can sort of catch people at the right time. So I think at the moment we are okay, but we'll probably have to think about maybe something in the next SR about whether we do have a source in there.
All right. Okay. All right. Good. Any other comments on this paper? It's noting board. Right, Mark, that's duly noted. Thank you very much. Kevin, I think we're just going into Ebbsfleet Living. What's been going on? Lots as always, I'm sure.
Been a busy Christmas New Year period, and Ebbsfleet, as hopefully the paper pulls out. Again, I'll take the paper as we read and just pull a couple of highlights out for board. Particularly pre-Christmas, there was quite a lot of activity in the Garden City area. A real note was the Ebbsfleet Events Committee, who run a Christmas fair, which is a 2-day event at the beginning of December. Over 2,000 people attended the 2 days, even though it was blisteringly cold and other factors, and raining on the second day. The events committee really comprises of local residents and entrepreneurs and budding businesses. So it's not just about having a fair, but also about the businesses that are starting to evolve in the Garden City area, and that sense of camaraderie and community that comes from organising and delivering the event. So we're really, really pleased with that. Obviously, of that, the real highlight was the Dartford Christmas Santa coming to visit on the Sunday afternoon. You might recognise some of his helpers and some of the
Bad Santa. Bad Santa.
in the paper. Again, Jeremy will say that there was horrendous weather at the time and over 400 people queued for 2 hours.
Just to see Jeremy.
Shake his hand. And his Santa. But again, a fantastic sort of annual event that's emerging that really sort of shows that camaraderie and the sense of community that's evolving, which we'll cover when Mary comes to look at the resident satisfaction survey, sort of captures some of that next. The other really event of note over Christmas was the Community Carol Service, which is now in its 4th, 5th year. And that's something that was funded this year by the Garden City Trust. What they do there is actually go around the local schools, they film kids doing Christmas carols, then they have a sort of travelling screen that goes around their neighbourhoods. They went to 4 neighbourhoods this year, including in Swanscombe as well. And again, 300 or 400 people turned out to sort of watch that carol service. So again, a really great event. And then within our own team, we continue to deliver the welcome events and drop-ins, and we had our first event at Cable Wharf in December as well, which is the first time we've been down at that new community in Northfleet. Also of note really is to say that the Garden City Trust Community Fund both met in November and January, and between the two meetings gave 11 grants out to the local community, and they have introduced an additional funding round between now and March to meet sort of needs for Easter on that. So again, it's really great to see that fund starting to expand. But happy to take any questions from board members. And just of note as well is that you approved the impact report last month, and that's now in the published version, which I've shared with you today. But happy to take any questions on the Ebbsfleet Development.
Yes, Neil.
Well done as ever. I noticed that you say that you've been asked to present to the all-party parliamentary group on new towns, which is credit to you and credit to us. When's that going to happen?
So it happened.
Well, it has happened.
Prior to Christmas. They were specifically really interested in learning of our experience of healthy new towns and how we've been sort of working with the community and embedding health into place. They were perhaps interested as well, maybe coming to visit and learning what development corporations might have lessons for the future as well. So, and following that, they also had a focused dinner just looking at healthy homes, which is something that we came up with the original idea of healthy homes here, which government have been very interested. The House of Lords did vote on it and it lost by 1 vote, unfortunately, before Christmas, but they're still really interested in how we deliver some of those concepts. For example, Countryside at Ashmere have many of the principles of healthy homes embedded within that scheme. So again, I think we've got some good lessons to share with others.
Good. Well done.
So far, ex-board member voted the right way on that. Look, some excellent work on all of this. I was particularly encouraged on 6.3 is something that was leader of a local authority, a local kind of cycling hub, and that to be very effective. Getting people to use bikes, exchange bikes, kids go out and whatever. I think it's something which is we really want to encourage. I think. Well done.
We had the first one of those yesterday in the Veterans Club in Northfleet. It was held. Yeah. We've been asked by numerous other places if we'd be interested in doing that. So I think this is an area there's definitely lots of interest in perhaps it's expanding.
Yeah, look, it's a good place to cycle to get to the transport infrastructure that we've got here. So you know, money is well spent in the next. Nick.
1 5-second point. I was interested in the Arcadis school children's experience here. Is that something which we can bully more of our consultants to undertake at our here, so we get more of that, not just the construction side. You've had so many consultants building a new city. Actually, you could run a really intense process if we got everybody to expand on their profession, school leavers and near school leavers careers for us here.
Yeah,
well, there's a question in there, but I mean, I think the point is the Arcadis thing worked everybody else should have to do it, or we should make sure that far more of our consultants and similar did.
Because we're now embedding social value into our procurements, that's one example of how the consultants can help us with our social value. So our kid has helped kick that off last year. Lara's been working with the development team and Jen's team and making sure it's embedded in all our contracts moving forward. So that's one example of the kind of things they could do with the schools. We also had school children going to Arcadis and to Countryside and others to learn from them on site. So we want to make it, as you say, a two-way dialogue. But as it gets more and more embedded in our social value work, I think we'll have more and more examples of that coming forward.
We've had our master planning team support some away days for with Lara as well. So there are quite a few other examples, but that one was particularly successful. So check it out.
All right, great. Excellent board. That again is for noting. Well done on all the work there. Important paper now, our resident satisfaction survey. Perhaps we talk through this, how we collated the information and high points and the not so high points from that.
I'm going to just pass over to Mary to lead on this one.
Mary, thank you.
For those of you, Mary has taken on the role of community development manager since April, but she's been here for a few years before that. And we've seen quite a transformational improvement in relationships with the community over the last year. So hopefully it's been reflected in Mary's presentation today. But over to you.
You've been doing a great job. Thank you. Right. Talk us through. Yeah.
Hopefully you've enjoyed reading the summary report, which will be on our website. Certainly the most colourful element of your pack today. I think it's very bright. So just to note a couple of things from it. Firstly, to note is the level of response that we gathered for the survey, which was over 2,000 respondents, which we've never been able to achieve that level before. And because of the level of response, we've been able to produce some rich and statistically significant results, which will be a great resource for us as an organisation. This survey forms part of our refreshed approach to carrying out an annual survey of residents that will be repeated again towards the end of this year. Just a few headlines where the results stand out as significantly higher than national scores, which is particularly impressive in a new and evolving community. Firstly, the sense of belonging, which is around 84% in the new communities compared to 56% nationally. The feeling that the neighbourhood they live in is a place where people of different backgrounds can get on well together. Again, 86% compared to 59% nationally. And one which I think really stands out is that 88% of residents report their quality of life being higher than the national average, with a score of 8 out of 10. So we have a great deal of data which sits behind the summary report that you've seen, which will be used to inform our work, and we will share with stakeholders who request that. And I'll just welcome any observations or comments.
Great. One thing would be great is if we could get some of these data out there. Yeah. I don't know how we're going to do that, not just on our website, but absolutely get it out there. I think there's some metrics here which are really outstanding. So great put forward. People like to draw focus to particular areas here. I'm going to go with Valerie first.
Thank you. Well, it is a really reassuring report, isn't it? And I love that 88% people saying quality of life. It's here. Something that I found curious though was the satisfaction with transport, particularly the train services, because it is a fantastic service, 15 minutes or whatever to town. But since 2021, it has been plagued with strikes. So I just can't understand why that would have improved as a metric over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it is intriguing. Sometimes the results have been surprising that, for example, some of the schools around facilities were lower again this year than they have been in the past. And I wonder if the expectation sometimes increases and then the scores change. Yeah, and also changes to the international service during that time as well. So you would expect it to have dropped.
I think reasons and context for failure is always built into satisfaction. People actually can separate their satisfaction with the service from external impacts that can't be avoided, and I think that's one of the reasons why that's the case. They don't blame anybody for it. They simply say, well, we're satisfied. We just wish there weren't strikes.
Yeah.
That's just curious. Anyway, thank you.
All right, then Neil, then I'm going to go to Fred.
Just 2 points here. Quite surprised that levels of volunteering are significantly lower in 23 than in 21. So it's not just, and this is that you've got a relatively young community who've just moved in, which might, because it's a comparison 21 to 23, that's low. And with all the fantastic work that Kevin's always telling us about, I'm just surprised that volunteering's gone down. And is it an accurate reflection? What can be done about it? And then levels of physical activity, surprisingly low, which again surprised me with all the facilities. And I know that we've got a bit of work to do on parks, but it just surprised me. And if we're going to use this information, I think we're going to need to think about what do we do about it and how do we do something about it?
Yeah, I think that point's well made, and I think we should, when we're considering our corporate priorities, stretch ourselves to try and achieve the areas where there can be improvements coming through from the residents' survey. Be that transportation, fast track. There's one thing which I continually pick up: resident concern about around fast track, getting that delivered as quickly as we possibly can do. Delivery of social infrastructure, 14 facilities as well. Picking that up in here as well. Obviously, we've got some items later on in this board agenda dealing specifically with that, but I think we need to crack on with some of these things.
It would be quite nice and good if we ask residents what we think, we get the answer and we get the data back, and if we then try and do something about it where we can, you say here's half the point of asking people.
Well, yeah, say if we start on some community facilities, like, to remind our residents the expressed a desire for progress to be made on that. And here there is. Here is the progress. This is what you wanted, and this is why this particular investment is happening and work has started on it. So absolutely. Yeah.
Touch on the volunteering. Is there? I think there's. Well, I don't know if it's more than a. Sorry,
no.
More than a theory, but
Yeah. So there's two points. The first point is that the last survey was exceptionally high. So because we did the last survey during COVID, everyone got quite community focused and started doing things actively. So we probably had overconfidence because of the last survey and people were suddenly volunteering. We have now got the census data since last time round, and this has also given us data in terms of age groups, which shows that we're a much younger population. We've got a very small percentage of older people and a very, very high percentage of working people.
Yeah.
So there's obviously less opportunity for people to volunteer. However, our team are already starting to think about volunteering as being one of our main focus area moving forward, both within the organisation and externally. So we do know this is an area we want to focus on. So we expected this. It's probably lower than we had. However, when we compare it to the neighbouring communities, it's the same. So we're probably in line with the sort of general trend locally. So it's in line with Dartford and Gravesham, lower than last time around, but I think that was because it was exceptionally high last time. Physical activity again did slightly surprise us, but actually if we go back to the 2016 baseline that we started working from, we've got 70% less green space than the national average in our existing and new emerging communities. So although you might see lots of green space, like Blue Lake and other things, it's not accessible to people. So accessible green space is less than the national average. And then our communities don't link. So the links between parks, we haven't got in place yet. So in the future, when we look at our grid of 7 city parks, it'll be a fantastic place to walk around and link and to be active in. At the minute, they're sort of contained within their own communities. We haven't built any new sports facilities yet. So in some respects, it's helpful to us because it's showing us what people really want. So when we do our business case development, it really gives us an evidence base of what people want us to do.
Yeah, I think absolutely. If you look at wayfinding around here, if you look at social infrastructure that we're putting in, if you look at business case development, Blue Lake, these are all areas which are communities wanting to be done. So that's supportive of actually doing the work. Great. Fred, I'm going to bring you in then, John.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on exactly the same point that Neil made about physical activity, and it's that it's both concerning. I can understand the reasons why we're sort of half a building site still and all sorts of things, but I think it's important because it's also, there's a statistical basis to this. And we know there is less activity than the Kent and the national average. Very much like to see us use that actually to improve the numbers. We're looking at our community facility. I mean, make sure that we're spending the money on the right stuff. On whether it's cycle paths, whether it's subsidising pick up and go cycle schemes, whether it's basketball courts, there's all manner of things. But let's work out how practically to turn that around. We ought to be able to turn around.
Yeah,
and should spend money on turning it.
I think that's Fred. Look, I think you're absolutely preaching to the converted on this. I think when we have these business case development and investments there, I think in some ways it would be good to link it back to the resident survey, so you can see what a priority it is for our residents when we're considering particular investment of a business case development. So yeah. Go on.
I'm just going to say a bit more because I mean I think we are genuinely surprised by that, because actually if you look over the last 3 or 5 years, mentioning the health and quite a lot of our placemaking activity has been around physical activity. Lots of different initiatives. So it is surprising. We clearly need to do more, whether it is about the physical buildings themselves. But I think that's what made us so surprised, because we felt like we'd done quite a lot around that. If you look at a lot of the money that the Community Investment Fund goes in, very often into physical activity, netball clubs, running clubs, etc. So yeah, it is surprising. Need to do more.
Well, generally it's a good story, but you can always do better. John, and then I'm going to bring in Richard.
But personally, I think the scores are good, very good for the audience you've surveyed. So I think I wouldn't be too disappointed with those for that audience. But it comes back to the context of the audience as well for me. The fact that they are happy with their environment and there's no issues with the environment, the neighbours, etc., isn't unsurprising. Bear in mind who they are and where they come from, and most of them are in work. So they're of a group that aren't really directly affected by some of the other things that others are. If you did the same sort of survey in other parts of Gresham, I'm sure even in Dartford, where they've got the highest deprivation in the country, you won't get the same answers. By a long shot, you won't get them anywhere near those. So you're dealing with an audience that's quite select in that sense. You haven't got homes for unaccompanied minors here. You haven't got all the other problems that our existing communities have got. So these figures are false until the community becomes really established and changes. And then you're talking many years away. But I think the figures you've got are really good. I'm not surprised about the volunteering levels going down, because that's post-COVID. That had everywhere that had a big effect, COVID. People became volunteers and then went back to work. When you're back at work, you don't volunteer because you're too busy working. So that's had an effect. More people have gone back to work instead of working from home. So that's all affect volunteering levels. Again, exercise. One thing I was slightly surprised about was the point you made that our green space that people have to enjoy here in the Garden City is less than the average, which I thought was a strange comment to make when we're meant to be a garden city. So if one of the problems we've got is not enough green space compared with the average, and our people going out to enjoy that green space is therefore low, I don't think necessarily you can put the two together. But I thought it was a strange comment to say we've got less green space than the average in a garden city.
Well, I think we need to open that up, don't we? That's the initiatives which
should be the other way around, really.
Yeah, sorry, that was referring to the 2016 baseline that we did. So in 2016, when we started, it looks green, but it's inaccessible. So it's not that there isn't green space, it's just an accessible green space for the community. Obviously, most of it's closed away. When we're finished, 44% of all the area will be green space, and it will connect and it will be accessible. It's just obviously we're in a transition between 2 points.
If the audience you're dealing with is almost unique. So great.
Yeah, look, I think we-
look in the figures, they're great.
Yeah, look, I think undoubtedly we're not dealing with the need deprivation that exists in the area. So that, you know, even though it may not be within our red line, to look at how we can possibly impact the whole community around here. Your point is well made, John. Richard?
Just so to turn back to the very positive side of the figures, have we considered how we make best use of those, perhaps to counter some of the narratives, some of the more negative narrative around modern development? So places like Northstowe get a lot of bad press, don't they, because there's not the facilities there and so on and so forth. But I don't know whether there could be perhaps more use made of the data to promote Ebbsfleet as an attractive place to live, given the level of satisfaction which do exist among people who have tried it.
Yes, I think look,
absolutely directly or by the house builders, really to
you know what adage, you've got a good story, make sure you tell it. Yeah, tell it again. Spread the news. Yeah, I think that's important. Absolutely.
I think a tiny quick question in terms of opening up green space. And I may have missed this over the year, but do we have a strategy for the SSSI for the element of Ebbsfleet Central that we're not going to be able to deliver because it's sort of massive space?
Jen, you want to come in on Ebbsfleet Central West?
Yeah, of course I can. So yeah, we've obviously, when we disaggregated sites, when that thing, we put this to the side for a bit, but we have now just reinitiated all the work on the west, looking at that whole corridor, the whole triple FI. And I think in my report later, we mentioned we just actually had a really good workshop with Natural England about that about 2 weeks ago now, to start those discussions about how we can get managed access into triple SI so that it doesn't remain, as Kevin rightly explains, a green space that no one can access. So yeah, that's very much.
Thanks, Jen.
No worries.
But generally, Jen, just to check up on that, you know, my experience is quite often you're dealing with a natural environment. Some people's you know, focus can be to try and lock it away, to preserve it, rather than to allow community access to it. What would you say the kind of overriding approach of Natural England is when we discuss?
So far, very positive. You know, we're very grateful to them. They set up a whole specific Ebbsfleet team to sort of sit and look more strategically at working with us. We are in a good position in that most of the protected species that it's been designated for are able to deal with a level of sort of human interaction, if you will. We don't have ground nesting birds. It is never going to be a free-for-all access, but they seem very happy to discuss a level of managed access, maybe that be boardwalks or something else, to get the community in and community activation of it. We know Natural England, you know, have their own ambitions to get people into nature much more than they've managed to achieve previously. And I think the way they've set their team up, I think they see the Triple SI within Ebbsfleet and working with us as a way, sort of, or setting up as a bit of an exemplar of how communities and nature can coexist together. So far, very positive.
That's great news. Okay. Any other comments on this? You know, again,
just to make one point on the.
Sorry, Nick. Did you had a question? Sorry.
But but actually, Richard made a pretty similar point. The numbers are very good. Presumably, we're going to deliver extracts of this to all of our house builder partners, because they'll get it out there better than we can. I mean, we have reasonable level of access, but our website's not. But actually, it should be featuring in their advert. And that's the simplest way to get out this great story.
Sorry, just a final point to follow on from John's. We do have data from 1,000 households outside the new developments. We haven't focused on them in this report, but we have that data available, and we've already met with Gravesham officers yesterday to sort of say we're happy to share that. So there is a neighbourhood and focus summary slide, but we do have a lot of rich data and surrounding communities which we can share with our partners.
Yeah.
And are you going to go back to the wider community with these results?
So people had the option of asking us to feedback the results to them. So we'll go back to those people specifically and then put this summary report on the website. But actually through that option at the end of the survey, we've also got now a really good database of people that want to be kept in touch with our work, and also people that are interested in working with us. And through that, we might be able to increase the level of volunteering as well.
Right, and the resident e-newsletter, are we going to have an element which relates to this in that? The resident e-newsletter, we're going to have some piece on.
So the plan was always to bring the resident satisfaction survey to the board publishing it and
Yeah.
the ambition to grow the newsletter database from participants, share the news stories across our social media platform, and to really harness a strong relationship between those that responded and said that they wanted to be kept in touch with future initiatives. So now that you've all had sight of the satisfaction survey, we'll be really drilling down the segmentation of how people want to get involved and involved, and the digital newsletter will be one element of that.
Okay, so we're going to have news.
Yep.
All right, good. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Great piece of work. Thank you very much indeed. Excellent work. So that is for noting, is it not? Yeah, that's for noting. That's duly noted. Gerard, finance, operations and programme.
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of you shows the position as at the end of December 2023, so end of quarter three. We received from the first section, which talks about our operational revenue spend, section 2, that we're forecasting to spend 7.1 million. We seem to like the figure 7.1. That 7.1 is made up of our 6 million allocation from the department and then utilising receipts generated in year. Moving on to our capital spend, sort of programme project activities, we're also forecasting that we're going to spend 7.1 million for this year. That is a reduction from the previous 8 million that we've highlighted. Unfortunately, there have been a bit of slippage in a couple of projects. Our spend has been reduced. We're projecting we can spend by the end of March. We've got a couple of 2 or 3 key projects that still have some quite significant spend to get out the door before March. Those sort of relate to Ebbsfleet Central, fast track work, Ebbsfleet Green Community Space. So, but if all of those happen, which we anticipate that they will, we should achieve that sort of 7.1 billion by the end of March. Other points that I would like to just highlight at section 7.4, you'll note that there's been an awful lot of recruitment going on. 7.4 highlights all the ones that have been successful. 7.5 just highlights that unfortunately there were 2 that we weren't quite successful with, but they are currently we are underway again with those 2 posts. And then at section 8, we are seeking approval for a change to the delegation of arrangements regarding the distribution of section 106 funds that we receive. It's set out sort of 8.3 what the proposed process is. So as I say, we are seeking approval to make that change. Non-discretionary and discretionary funds as outlined in the.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Can I quickly ask where we've got budget headroom on CDEL? Where are we on that being carried forward or swept away?
I think we had a response from our
We've made a request to the department as part of the supplementary budgeting process to roll over that amount into future years. So we are waiting for the outcome of that, which is obviously not just impacting on us across the department.
Okay.
And we've had a number of inquiries since Christmas from our sponsor team about our anticipated level of spend next year, how that's made up, etc. That's actually this committee, etc. So.
Okay. All right. Neil.
Just on the 833, the panel that's proposed for discretionary 106. And the proposal is that there be a panel that has authority in relation to those funds. Chief Executive, Director of Planning and Place, the Chair of the Planning Committee. I think it's, in principle, it's a good idea. But just to make sure that this is a planning decision rather than a non-planning decision, just a slight tweak, and I've talked to others about this in advance. I would suggest that it's the delegation is to the Director of Planning and Place, but the Director of Planning and Place is to act in consultation with a panel comprising those people, so that the delegation is to the Chief Planning Officer, who then carries out or acts on that authority in consultation with those 2 people. I mean, it comes down to very much the same thing, but
All right,
I think it's probably the right way of doing it.
Fred.
And on that point, it's maybe a question for the planning committee rather than for the board. But how do we envisage linking how we spend the Section 106 monies with, for instance, the residents' needs and satisfaction survey? Deficits in sporting facilities, for instance. Is there a link there that is either appropriate, desirable?
But it seems to me that the first restriction on it is what was the money paid for? We've got to use it for whatever it was paid for.
Yes.
And we might have a discretion within that, which is what we're dealing with here. And it seems to me that it would be, it'd be quite a thing to say as a matter of policy, we're going to give priority to one thing over another, when we should be considering all relevant considerations, and we give them different weight depending on, but the resident survey could be one of the things we looked at.
Perhaps we can discuss that at
Yes.
planning next time we get a Section 106. Because there should be in principle, I'm not sure I see a divergence between the needs as revealed by the survey, for instance, and the proper spending for Section 106. You see it, I mean, because there are facilities needed as a result of the development.
But this is different to a decision made at planning committee on do you accept the 106. There we have to say, is it necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms? Does it meet the other requirements? This is once you've got the money paid under a 106, but the 106 gives a bit of flexibility on what it goes to. And it seems to me it'd be wrong to tie ourselves up in knots by giving priority to one thing over another when it will depend on a variety of factors.
In reality, although there is some discretion with some, it's not very broad.
Okay, this is
There is
apparent and real, is it?
There is some discretion, but it's probably you can put it into this or into that, and it's very rarely is a sort of free.
The example I was given is you might be able to spend it on one part of the fast track route as opposed to another.
Limited discretion.
You're welcome to that committee.
There are some things which
enjoy it.
No discretion. There is
also the challenge of giving people the sewage farm is popular. So if you go that route, I mean, 106 is there really to do things which have to be done, isn't it? And
the other point I'm thinking that things have to be done. The survey reflects the fact that things need to be done if there's further development. There aren't enough sports facilities for the number of people we have, for instance. That's the only point I'm making.
It's another conversation downstream. Downstream.
Sewage, yes.
All right. Okay.
So we're very happy to support Neil's suggestion that the panel is effectively advisory. The formal delegation sits with the director of planning and policy.
So we have a decision in front of us, board. Is everyone happy with that?
Yep.
Okay, right, good. So I think that's dealt with the paper. Thank you very much, Gerard. Then Paul, we've got development, infrastructure and labelling works.
Paul and Jen.
And Jen, sorry.
Yeah, so a bit of overlap. So we'll just both quickly, I'm sure, drag out a couple of highlights for you. So from the development team perspective, the main update is that having now appointed the full design team for the first phase of infrastructure at Ebbsfleet Central, they have now commenced the REBA Stage 1 design process, which is all getting managed by M3, our development manager, which is great progress. So starting ourselves on that full and proper journey as always intended. In terms of Thames Way and Blue Lake, as detailed at 4.2, that whole programme of technical and commercial work is nearing conclusion. It's been a very much an iterative process to determine the optimum infrastructure solution to unlock Blue Lake as an asset, and we are aiming to bring a strategic outline case to board at the meeting in March for that. In terms of Grove Road, we're presenting a strategic outline case to you in part 2 later on, which is the conclusion of our thoughts about a preferred option to bring that forward. And with regards to Northfleet Embankment East, alongside the work on planning, we have been doing work with Wilmot Dixon on an independent review of the cost plans. And that is going through some further cost interrogation, which we're engaging with our investment panel on. Will all form part of a future full business case for that project. So things are still moving on in the right direction. And then Paul, I hand to you.
Thank you, Jen. In terms of the infrastructure section of the report, take the report as read, but just a few updates since this was published. The first one with respect to Springhead Bridge. So following ongoing discussions with KCC, Derek, thank you for your support in those discussions. We're in a position now where KCC have finally agreed to the adoption process of Springhead Bridge itself. We've completed the principal inspection very early doors January, and we're in the process of chasing down the principal inspection report, which we will forward across to KCC. There are no issues of any concern that have been identified within the principal inspection, so that should all be a formality to then aid and preclude the adoption process. In terms of electricity, Jen's mentioned the master planning team on board. We had our first joint Ebbsfleet Central infrastructure team, UKPN and master planners meeting last week, which was very, very advantageous. A good introductory meeting, good to set some ground rules and expectations in terms of what the immediate priorities are, which are essentially locating the Ebbsfleet Central primary substation and the associated cable routes. With regards to Fast Track Bean Tunnel, following or further to the publication of this report, on the 15th of January, we had a meeting with KCC, one of our regular catch-up meetings, whereby they advised us that their tunnel contractor, Balfour Beatty, who'd done all the investigatory works, had actually declined to go ahead with the construction of the Fast Track Bean Tunnel. Do
we know why? Is that a big red flag?
I think the summary as to the reasons why is that they've appointed a new risk council internally within Balfour Beatty. They have reassessed the project risks and they decided that they weren't prepared to go ahead with the project, Simon. I think there's also the bigger issue for me was that they had redeployed their key resources that were allocated to actually construct the tunnel. So those were the sort of reasons that were cited to us when we met with our KCC colleagues. We have offered to assist in the procurement process of their tunnel contractor. We understand they're currently looking at the Eastern Highways Alliance framework as a potential procurement route. That decision hasn't been finalised, but they are looking at several options at the moment, that being one of them.
Remind us, how long is this tunnel?
That's a good question. I think it's about 35 metres. It's not a massively long tunnel.
And then the dual carriageway. It's a dual carriageway that stretches.
It is, yes.
Okay.
Between Whitecliff.
There is a potential existing challenge with an existing water main, a Thames water main, that sits very, I think it sits above the proposed location of where we're looking to, KCC are looking to construct.
So it's a water main under the dual carriageway.
Yes.
We're tunnelling underneath it.
That's correct.
Are we like tunnelling?
Well, we're not.
You know, yeah. But the contract, are they tunnelling sort of horizontal to land, or are they going down and up?
At grade.
Yeah, they're going directly through.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Is that a man-made flyover? What's the ground conditions like? Just to understand.
We've asked for all that information. We haven't had that information at the moment, Simon. We've asked for all that to Balfour Beatty information pack to be forwarded to us to assist in our review of the overarching legal agreements.
Okay, all right.
So we committed a lot of money to quite a significant feasibility study that Balfour did as a pre-construction arrangement to actually examine all of the physical constraints there. So there's a lot of information that's been gathered by them, which obviously will be passed over.
Okay, all right. So can we, when we got a bit more information, you'll put this in the next report, so we understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
just
more
to,
detailed.
you know, understand why they had headed for the hills here. All right.
Key point is a strategic, because presumably they can probably say no. What are the constraints in terms of the covenants about if there's a 15-metre normal prohibition go down on the sideways? How much of it is Thames water and how much is actually the quality of the cliff, the chalk cliff that we're going to be drilling in?
Yeah, sure. As I say, we've requested that information and we'll be reviewing that as and when we receive it.
I think the biggest thing is going to be the legal position with
Yes.
Strategic Water Authority, because almost certainly they've got the right to say no.
They've been to the whole realm of ground movement assessments.
Yeah.
It's a protection regime, wouldn't you?
All right. Look forward to further information on that. Clearly, it's a priority to advance that.
Absolutely.
So it's unfortunate this turn of events. Yes, Jeremy.
Thank you. You might want to refer this to a part 2 conversation. It might involve some information about sum of money, but the KCC request for support for mass mobility as a service.
Yes.
I have to say, philosophically, I have some difficulty getting my head around that. It seems like we're kind of reinventing something that the private sector does rather well, which is producing an app for local people to reach transport option decisions. And it was 2 or 3 years ago, I think it first arose as a Kent-wide scheme, I think. I don't think I have to declare an interest, because I've always been the same view about it, so I don't think it might be positive towards it. But I'm willing to listen and see it, but I'd just like to know whether the board are going to have a chance to know more about it before we further those conversations.
Yeah, what is this thing? What is it?
Well, it basically, I mean, I'm not the person to describe it because I don't get it. So you need someone who does get it to understand it, to describe it to you. But my understanding is it's a kind of a bit like one of the apps you have on picking travel options, and it will go from place to place. You say where you're starting from, where you want to go, but it's limited now, I understand, to the Ebbsfleet fast track area. And quite whether you're going to get buy-in from residents when they have other options to do that and convert people. We've had 230 people sign up to our newsletter. If you get a similar number signing up to the app, it can't be judged to be a great success. So I just think we need to know more about it. I'm willing to be positive about it, but I just don't. It's just been dogging it. It's been going along for years in the background and never quite coming to fruition. And I think there's now a need for funding for it. And I'd just like to know more about it before we proceed.
Yes, we'll be providing an update paper on that, Jeremy, as we get more information. We've literally just started those discussions with KCC following the formal request to provide some top-up funding.
Right. Yeah, look, it's normally a good rule. Don't get involved with the public sector where the private sector does a much better job than you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you won't win. Great white elephants. All right, great. Any other comments on that paper? All right, Paul, I think you know where our focus is there. Yes, go on, Nick.
Just under the wastewater treatment.
Yes.
The peer review. Is that a peer review of other wastewater treatment plants?
No, it is a peer review of the odour control measures, the extra odour control measures that Southern Water will propose to us once they've actually identified their statutory upgrade plan design. So they're doing that now. That will be finalised by sort of middle of March. Once they're in a position where they've decided which of the 3 options they're proceeding with on their own infrastructure upgrades, we'll then reconvene with them to ascertain what is the most economic odour control methodology. We will get that methodology and that commercial offer peer reviewed.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for that, Paul and Jen. That then brings us towards the end of our part 1 business for today. The responses to the written questions that we've received, thank you for sending those. Keep sending them in. Whoever's generating those is doing a great job. It's got eyes on us, which we like. It's good for us. That would be posted on our website. So I'd just like to take the opportunity of thanking everyone for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at our board meeting in March. Thank you.